to bring in our guest. I just heard her pop in. We are joined, and I'm going to nail this name the first time around. Karen, welcome to the show. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski.
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 Close. Kwiatkowski.
Damn it. Kwiatkowski, thank you. She's retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments included duties as a Pentagon desk officer and various roles for the National Security Agency. She's the author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, The Challenge and Solutions. Karen, thank you for joining me this morning. You doing all right?
I am. Thanks for having me.
No, always. I'm happy to have you. It's funny. I was covering Ukraine and the clip from Tucker Carlson putting a knife in Mark Cuban. One of the interesting things that just broke from Ukraine was, I guess, twofold. One, Russia sent 820 drones, not to mention missiles, in order to hit precision targets that were in Kiev. Two, these attacks have increased with attacks on the oil field, even an attack on a bridge. And you even get this kind of weird political chaos with the foreign minister effectively fleeing out the country. Right here, just to show the headline of the article that just came out. Initially, he said he was going to fight with shovels. And now he's effectively fleeing the country like a thief in the night. This is, of course, Kobela. He is now in Poland, saying that he was concerned that a law was going to come into fruition that was going to trap him in the country, and he feared for his life.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make the argument to the public that this war is a fool's errand, and the continuation of this war is only to the detriment of Ukraine. Give me your take on this. I mean, are you surprised that there hasn't been more political chaos in the country at this point?
In Ukraine? More
Yes.
Political chaos in Ukraine? Yeah. Well, a little bit surprised, but I think from the very beginning, we've kind of understood this war was, never going to end the way the West and NATO had wanted it. And also, we don't report and we don't talk about who started this war.
Right.
The eastward expansion of NATO, contrary to many both written and spoken promises by heads of state, by key leaders, treaties that were defiled and purposely ignored, like the Minsk 1 and 2, that we found out years later, the public found out years later, that those treaties were just signed to buy time for Ukraine to go ahead and someday soon start a war with Russia. And then, of course, the hypocrisy of it was that realistically, small Ukraine, even with NATO's help, even with the United States' help, was never going to win a land battle of any type or an air war, and certainly not a naval war against Russia. They were never going to win. And the Western leaders, particularly Biden's people, the neocons in Washington, who really wanted this for decades, knew that. They knew that they would lose. They knew Ukraine would suffer. And we've got the famous words of the South Carolina senator who said, the Ukrainians dying to kill Russians. This is, or our money spent to kill Russians in Ukraine at no cost to American lives is the best investment we've made, the best money we've ever spent. And he's publicly, Lindsey Graham has said this publicly, but this also reflects the thinking of the neocons in Washington and the neocons and warmongers in NATO. They see Ukraine as a sacrificial lamb. And it's one thing to say, well, 3.5 years into this, yeah, clearly they were a sacrificial lamb. Clearly Ukraine has been destroyed and has suffered great losses, both of territory and people and economy and infrastructure. Clearly that's happened. We say that now, the public says that now, we can see it. This is what Washington said from day one. They were intended to die for Western objectives, which were, as the Rand Corporation has written publicly, to weaken, to overextend
Russia,
to cause Russia to have its own Vietnam, something like that. This kind of thinking is not what the American people think. It's not how we think, but it is how Washington thinks. And this is played out precisely as you would have expected, as I would have expected. And the people that are not expecting it, the people that are surprised, I think in some cases are the Ukrainians themselves. They were told, you go do this thing. You're the vanguard against this evil Russian empire, which there is no evil Russian empire. It's not an empire. It's not evil. But Ukrainians were told, you're the vanguard and we will back you up. We will help you. And guess what? We've never lost a war, which is, of course, a lie. But we will make this a success for you, and you will be better, stronger, faster than you ever were before. This is what the West told Ukraine. So, and a lot of Ukrainians obviously left the country. Okay. Yes. A number of Russian-speaking Ukrainians voted to join Russia, where they wouldn't be bombed every day by Kiev, which is what had been happening since 2014. But, Ukrainians have been used and abused here, and we have been doing it. Now, is Russia ramping up their conclusion of the war? Are they now targeting political targets to some extent, leadership, infrastructure? I think they're going to go there, but they're not quite. They've held back. But,
yeah,
this is it's so easy to see in retrospect, and yet many voices were and logical people could have looked at this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and said, this is where this is going to end.
Syrskyi, Ukrainian commander, has come out and pointed out the enemy has threefold advantage in force and means and can prevail 4 to 6 times. He apparently wrote this on Telegram. And yet they're still plugging away. It's just amazing to me. They're still plugging away.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the Ukrainians in Ukraine. I mean, people fight. People fight. If you've decided, if you haven't left Ukraine yet, you're probably there to fight, I think. And there's a lot of this, the power of, when countries go to war, it's a great unifying thing for the people in that. This is how Bush got us into, after 9/11, right? We're going to go kick somebody's butt. We're going to get Afghanistan, right? They didn't have anything to do with it, but it didn't matter because we'd been attacked, quote unquote, on 9/11. Right. And that unified people to go want to fight. And there's a number of people who joined the military, never had any intention of ever joining the military. After 9/11, they did that. And so this is the power of state propaganda. It's a power of kind of a war, a lust for war, a sense of justice of some sort that the state can promote. And I'm sure, Ukraine, and particularly I guess we're not neo-Nazis, whatever they are, Ukraine far-right nationalists who despise Russia and celebrate aspects of the Nazi regime. Okay, this is who they are. And they have stayed to fight, and their propaganda is very different than what we're talking about. This is existential, so there will be people that fight. And of course, one of the objectives of the operation that Russia launched almost 4 years ago was to eliminate the Nazi influences in Ukraine. They stated that. Now, we in the West, we say, what Nazi influences? we wouldn't know a Nazi symbol if we, had it in Washington, we wouldn't even recognize it. But Russia said they were going to deal with that aspect. And this is one thing the West never talks about. We don't recognize that, but those guys are on the chopping block right now. And Russia, since we haven't done anything to ameliorate that political excess, if you want to call it, Russia's going to take care of that. And how are they going to take care of it? Well, they might be killing people. They might be killing people. This is what war looks like. It's sad.
Karen, that's a hell of a euphemism. Political excess. Like the Nazis are only political excess. No, you're absolutely right. You're 1,000% right. It's like there are no Nazis in Ukraine. But months beforehand, you had article after article after article about flag burning ceremonies. You had Democrats writing memos saying, hey, we need to do something about the Nazis in Ukraine. And then immediately when the war starts, there are no Nazis in Ukraine. They're just, they're lovable human beings riding through Kursk with swastikas on German tanks. That's all. It's just, it's like, what do you mean Nazis? It's amazing to me. What do you make of this new Pentagon, quote unquote, plan that they've brought out that's apparently going to Hegseth's desk. And the plan is effectively saying, look, we need to withdraw from Russia and China. We need to focus on the homeland. And I've had different points of view on this, of people giving their take on this from different parts of the world, from China and even from Russia itself. You were in the military and you were in the Pentagon. I'm curious on your take on this.
Well, what kind of focused this for me is, the Venezuela. The activity that we're doing, supposedly fighting drug. Well, everybody knows it's about oil. It's about some sort of Trump re-envisioned Monroe Doctrine on steroids, something like that. But the interesting part of that, not talking about China or Russia, but maybe China a little bit, is that the most pro-China guy, number 3 in the Pentagon, his name is he had a hard time getting confirmed, actually.
Colby,
the grandson of a former CIA director. But he was a very big China hawk, and not a Russia hawk, and not a pro-European guy. He thought, his whole claim to fame, his image was very much, China's our big adversary. We need to orient towards China. Of course, neocons said that. A lot of folks in Washington agree with that. And he was a leader of that. But yet he is the guy that is saying, well, no, actually, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on the hemisphere. We're going to focus on North and South America, which, and I'll tell you, I like it. I like it because, we can't have peace unless we have another war, right? Can't end one war without starting another one. So now we're messing around in our hemisphere, particularly in Venezuela. It makes sense to Americans. We already called it the Gulf of America. Now we're going to extend it down to the oil fields of Venezuela. But if Pentagon can cut the knees off, or cut the legs off below the knees of the pro-China hawks who want to fight for Taiwan and turn Taiwan into another Ukraine, which we can tell you right now what the end of that will be, much as it is for Ukraine, except it could be nuclear. So obviously that's not smart for the United States. We have a military that capabilities do not match the budget, $1 trillion plus who knows how much for the intel community. And we can't predict a thing, and we can't win a war. We can't we can't produce weapons in the tens of thousands. We count our weapons in triple digits. Yeah, we made 900 this month, of munitions that you need 1,000 a day just to maintain the battlefront. So we can't produce, we can't make. Our equipment technology is very slow to come to market. It's highly expensive. Nobody can afford it, and it doesn't work as advertised. So this is a big problem for us going up against China. It's not a big problem if you're going up against, somebody in your backyard that has an army and a small navy, and they fly in Venezuela. They fly the F-16s that we sold them in the 80s. So that's an old aircraft right now. Not a bad aircraft, but it's older. So this is in our lane. Now we are staying in our lane. And if they can, and here's the other thing that, I know I'm not making sense here, but the other thing that Trump is good at, and I don't know if it's the art of making a deal, but he recognizes when something's lost. And I like about Trump the way he left the Red Sea, right? Remember, we sent a big thing. We're going to free up shipping for everybody. And then it was, we're just going to free it up for Israel. And then we just declare victory and go home. And why did we do that? Because it was very expensive and very ineffective. Our military, our Navy in particular, in that environment was just not a match. There's no way the Houthis could continue on forever, and we would continue to pour money into the water, which is what we were doing. And so Trump was able, or willing, because he's the way his mind works, he says all kinds of things, right? So he called it a victory. We won. We beat the Houthis. We showed them, and then we left. And I think Eldridge Colby and others, and Trump, are recognizing that there's not going to be a military confrontation with China, because if there is, we're going to lose about 6 aircraft carriers in 2 days. And then it's going to go nuclear. And that what does that do for Trump's Peace Prize? What does it do for his legacy, right? Nothing. And he knows that. So And plus, we don't have the money for it. It's not just the industrial base that Trump wants to re-energize. We have so many trillions of debt that other countries don't even find our dollar attractive anymore, and they don't trust us. They don't trust our leadership. They don't trust Trump. So we're not in any position to start a big war. So Colby comes up, and the Trump people, I assume, okay, let's pull back. We're going to have a war, all right. It's going to be one we can win in Nicaragua, a drug war. And now all of a sudden, China and defending Taiwan are off the table. And anybody who complains about that in Washington, and there will be many, because that was the reason they wanted China and to save Taiwan or whatever, is to keep the gravy train going in Washington for the defense industrial complex. So they make so much money when we are at war and preparing to go at war. So I think they've gutted the standing foreign policy of this country that has been this way, really a continuation from 30, 40 years ago, this great power conflict. I think he's ended it. And he ended it in a typically Trump way. He declared victory. We've won. You remember his little, they had the big meeting in China with India. Modi was there. Putin was there. Of course, the Chinese leader. And he sent a snarky he posted something snarky on Truth Social and X and everything. And he's like, oh, enjoy your little conspiracy or whatever. And that's not what he said. He said something,
it's like you're conspiring against America. It's like, I hope you think of America when you're having your your parade or something like that.
That is so, I almost want to say that's so gay. It's terrible. But that is so, that is so something spoken over martinis at a bar, right? You're looking at another group that's shot you a dirty look and so, well, you just go be you, right? I'm going to be me. And it's so Trump. It's smart. It's smart because he doesn't care what people think about him, right? He doesn't care if somebody thinks he's weak.
You're president of the U.S. and you're sending these like snarky comments at a World War II ceremony. A victory is like,
oh yeah.
Nobody thanked America for the contribution. I hope you threw that while you're conspiring against us. It's like, okay, dude, are you serious right now?
That's right. Yeah, and the way Trump is doing it is also similar to the European view. Europe has totally discounted the role of China and Russia. I think I think it's the head of the I forget, Callis or somebody.
Oh, Callis.
She's been saying a lot of crazy things.
She's so adorable. Oh, yeah. She's so adorable. Yeah,
she's adorable. Yes, bless her heart. But she is talking about China didn't fight in World War II. What did Russia do? And it's like, for Europeans to say that is really, well, the Chinese, I think, said she was poorly educated. And, she clearly, I don't know if she knows what she's saying or she's just thinks that this makes sense to her now. But it's very wrong. And I think, so Europe and America, we're kind of like withdrawing into our own little circle of ignorance, which is fine. It's fine for us to do that. It will be safer for the world if we will focus on ourselves. And obviously this is good manners, right? I mean, it's all comes down to really just good manners. Trump doesn't have good manners, but effectively, because he can very easily, I think better than other people, he can assess where can I win and where am I going to have to call it a win because I'm going to lose. And so he called Red Sea a win. It was a loss. He called it a win. He pulled out. China, I mean, one look at that military parade. Trump called for a military parade a couple months ago. I don't know how many people watched that thing, but that was insane.
So sad.
That was very sad. And Trump, we were just watching bits and pieces on the television. We didn't dedicate hours of planning and sitting there at an alert stance for 2 hours watching these guys. Trump invested in that, and he saw what his money bought him. Okay, it bought him an embarrassment. Really, it's just not, and particularly for Trump, to have to see that, because Trump likes the show. He's all about the show, and that show sucked. I mean, that was bad. That was bad, and not only was it bad, but it was hyped, and everybody watched it, and everybody drew the same conclusion. That's really bad. If that's what America has, we're in trouble. So then he sees the Chinese parade, And of course, he's probably watched the North Korean parades too. Quite well orchestrated, very, very well done, very impressive. And he probably watched Putin's parade, which they had in Moscow. That's very nice also. And he knows Trump can make an assessment. You know, he will drop a bad investment quickly. He will drop a friend that screws him over quickly. Look how, you know, Elon Musk almost gave him as much as Marian Adelson did, right? He hadn't dropped Marian Adelson. We don't know why. I think it's blackmail. But he dropped Trump. I mean, he dropped Musk. Trump dropped Musk very quickly. And Musk probably got him elected more than Miriam did. You know, because you got a lot of independents and a lot of non-voters who, once Musk became excited, he was a spectacle to watch. And that was free advertisement and a lot of money, you know, millions of dollars that Musk gave him. And then Musk questioned something that Trump didn't like, cut him off so quick. That's Trump. He can make a decision rapidly, which is bad in a nuclear age, dangerous in a nuclear age. But I think he's assessing things. I think he sees that we're going to get really slapped badly if we don't get back in our lane and focus on something that helps America. And if
Karen,
that's the case, I don't know. I like it.
if that's true, well, two things. One, you know, Kayla's wrote a book.
What's
And
that?
I am thinking about Kayla's. She actually wrote a book.
Yes.
She actually sat down and wrote a book.
Oh.
I am thinking about getting that book and just reading it to my audience. For my, this is an aside. I worked with a woman once who wrote this book, and my ex, very jealous, even though this is literally just a coworker. She bought the book out of curiosity, and the things that were in the book were amazing. And I remember she was reading me the book. She speaks German. She's like Austrian.
Uh-huh.
And then she's reading the book with an accent. It is pretty wild when you hear this kind of world that people create in those books. I am super curious about what is in that book, especially with the things that Kayla says openly and just with infinite confidence. You know, the Russians are good. They're bad at technology, but the Chinese are good at technology, and they're working together. And it's like, oh God, why do you have a mic? Why do you have a mic? The other point, if that's true, that Donald Trump can let stuff go,
mm-hmm.
Why hasn't he walked away from the Ukraine war?
Well,
he could walk.
He could walk away. I think that the reason we're seeing such hysteria in Europe, especially amongst the anti-Russian parts of Europe in the EU, is because he is walking away. I think he is. I think they were shocked at the first 3 months when things were frozen. You know, he was examining everything. And it really, there's two reasons we're walking away from Europe. One is particularly Ukraine. Ukraine is a suckhole of weaponry, okay, that we have to pay for. Somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to build it. There's a long lead time. And we don't do that very fast in this country. We don't produce massive amounts of munitions. And that's the way this war is being fought. So we can't deliver anyway. So even if it was a different president, even if it was Harris, let's say Harris was the president, the Pentagon, her Pentagon person, her Department of War person would tell her, Mrs. President, we cannot deliver to Ukraine. So you're going to have to figure out some way to tell Europeans that we don't have enough stuff. So I think they're really facing reality in that respect. And Europe knows this. Europe recognizes this, and they're panicking. But yeah, he is withdrawing from Europe. I think that's if you ask Europeans, I think that they believe that. And I think it's true.
Fair enough. But what Donald Trump has decided was to make this a business deal.
Well,
and it doesn't seem like, I agree with you. It's an industrial war.
Yeah.
1000% agreed. And America is trying to supply multiple wars all across the globe, whether it's giving weapons to Taiwan, giving weapons to Israel, and giving weapons to Ukraine in this case.
Yeah.
But he didn't pull back the weapons from Ukraine in that sense. He just decided to let Europe buy them. Well, I mean, he's trying to get Europe to spend like hundreds of billions of dollars to effectively buy weapons from the US with a 10% markup on top of it.
Right. And Europe agreed to that, even though their own economies collectively cannot afford that. So to me, and I have to say, maybe I'm just nuts. I read too much into, I don't really understand. Maybe that's what it is. But when I saw that deal that he cut not just the economic deal, but the military deal in particular. Yeah, we're going to produce all this stuff and you're going to buy it, and you're going to buy it from us, even though we're building you stuff that technology is 15, 20 years old, but we're going to, and it's very expensive. And the F-15 only flies 33% of the time if you're lucky. But we're going to make you buy all this stuff, and you're going to pay a premium, and you're not going to outsource anything. You're going to buy it from us. And it's over the next 5 or 10 years. I'm like, first off, Trump ain't going to be here in 5 or 10 years. We know that as president. But to me, that was like kind of like how credit card companies do people that don't have jobs. Sure, here's a nice credit card, and as soon as you make a few payments, we're going to raise your limit. We're going to raise your limit. But ultimately, the credit card company credit analysts, the system that looks at their buyers, they've written off these particular credit card users. They know that a big percentage of their lower income customers are going to be write-offs. Okay, which is partly why they keep their credit rating low. But I mean, they keep their limits low. But I saw that. I mean, this deal is almost like a fantasy deal from Trump's perspective. And I think that's how Trump plays a lot of things. He sells casinos that don't exist, right? He builds hotels. He sells hotels that were nothing but swampland or a waste facility. And he sells the bankers what he's going to make in 2 or 3 or 4 years. And sometimes he does it. And sometimes he doesn't do it. And how many times has he gone bankrupt and been bailed out, which is another problem for our foreign policy? He's been bailed out by the wrong people. But again, to me, this is another deal. Trump cuts a deal, and he doesn't really care 4 years down the road who's going to sit and count. Oh, wait a minute. They actually didn't buy those weapons that they said. And who can predict? I mean, the governments of European countries, many of them are in turmoil. I think the French parliament for the 5th time in 2 years has collapsed or something. There's a lot of people, voters in European countries, who are tired of the debt. They realize that the more debt they have, the less Social Security they get, the less health care they get. They realize that, much as I think we do. But they realize it, I think, more acutely than we do. And so they don't like these governments that are making war. And plus, Europe, what is it? It's an old society, demographically very old of Europeans. They have young immigrants. Neither the old European stock or the younger immigrants are going to fight a war for you. Okay? Hey, that's not going to happen. So European countries know they can't afford war. They don't want war. They're not going to pay for war. So in that context, what kind of deal was Trump cutting for himself? The future of Europe is either going to be losing a war drastically or deciding to go a different route, which is peace or neutrality. They don't have the money to do it. He knows it. They know it. Everybody knows it. And what does he do? He inks a deal, because that's what Trump does. And he calls it a victory. Oh, this is going to be great. But none of the players are going to be here even in a few years to go back and say, wait a minute, you said you were going to do this. Oh, well, things have changed, right? I'm either rich or I'm a bankrupt. This is Trump's approach. And it's not necessarily good foreign policy or diplomacy or anything like that. But it is what we have. And Trump does realize that our country, the United States of America, filled with all of our great people, is suffering. And we are not robust. Okay. We have big, big problems, and we have this terrible debt, and we're becoming increasingly unpopular in the world. So guess what? Trump knows this. He's not stupid. I think he's bringing us in, and it's a slow process because he is going counter to the traditions of Washington, D.C. since 1940s, right? Which has been outward, onward empire. So anyway, I don't know. There's a little bit of hope.